Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to another Geometry Dash building video. This one's a lot more simple than usual, but it's an idea that I've had for a while. I was thinking about the levels that RobTop made for Geometry Dash Sub-Zero, which kind of previewed 2.2 to us and used the features in some pretty interesting ways in demonstrating camera controls such as these. What if I took the initiative to make a new RobTop style level in a very uncut video that shows my entire building process and hopefully shows you a lot of the 2.2 basics. I'm going to be using the song Parallels by Nitro Fun. It's got a little start off set right here with a fade in. You can browse through artists in the Geometry Dash music library and just check one like Nitro Fun. That's how I got to Parallels here, and then you just drag the slider along to a spot that you like. I like this section of the song, so I'm going to start it right here with a little fade in. And yeah, from here on out, I'm just going to leave this mostly uncut and just show you all of the stages that would go into making a little RobTop style level. So the first thing I'm going to pick out is a nature themed background. That's usually what RobTop goes for. I'm just going to pick that little hilly background and then some sort of ground that kind of matches the vibe. This one with like the little teeth in the ground. That's pretty cool. And this is going to work pretty well because I can show the functionality of like gradients in the ground, right? How important it is to choose the colors well. So to do so, I'm going to press this little plus button that's in the background tab and next to the ground and ground 2 as well. So this is a HSV slider where you can change the hue and the saturation of the background and also the brightness and just see the results in the level. So let's just say I want the background to be like this, right? Then I just go to the ground and I would choose a color for the ground. Maybe I want it to be black, and already this is looking pretty decent. I feel like this is something Rob would go with. I'm also going to go into the ground tab and go to this little line option. Line 2 makes the line a little bit thicker and it doesn't fade off at the sides anymore. And line 3 is honestly comically huge. I'm probably not going to go with that one because it's just a bit harder to use, especially when most of the object lines that we're going to be using are much thinner. And now I'm just going to look for an object that I can use that has a base and a detail, so I can show the functionality of that and choosing your blocks before you build. Okay, so this brick, right? It has a base and a detail. I'm going to set this to 1 and 2. Now, coincidentally, 1 is used as the base on this little HSV slider, and 2 is used as the detail. So if I just slide this up to red, you can see that only the main parts of the block that are indicated by the non-blue parts. The blue parts in these little boxes are the details, anything that's going to be a secondary color on this object, aka number 2, which I'm probably going to make yellow, just because it looks nice with the background. It's a cool color combo. It also matches my icon, which is quite coincidental. And with that, I'm probably going to change the line to be yellow as well, so it matches. This is good. If I just pause, that will take effect. And then also bouncing off that, I'm probably going to make the object, which is now just in like the default tab for any object you place. There used to be an option here where you could change the object color, but I guess that's just not a thing anymore. So the way to do it is to just either use a color channel, which I might just do because it's easier. Example number 2. This would work pretty well if I put this object on top of the other one. That's a cool little brick object, right? With the vibes out of the way, it is time to make some nice, simple, easy to sight read gameplay. We're gonna go with 3-star gameplay. And what I gotta recommend is just leaving the level pretty open at first, especially if you're a new creator, and just figuring out the direction the level's gonna go in first. Just putting simple blocks, not really structuring too much at first, just adding nice, simple, synced jumps into the level. Gonna make sure that this platform is nice and consistent so we always land here, because orbs, you can hit them early, you can hit them late. Also with jumps like these when you're waiting, you can kind of jump like, let's just use a starter market. You can jump between these 2 ranges and make it to the next block, and then you have the range of like here to here. So you really have to think about that when you're building, just how the player is going to hit things in different ways than you might expect, especially if they're new to the game. Bro, watching new players is it's a baffling experience. It blows my mind to watch people play the game for the first time and not really understand the mechanics and not time their jumps the way that you might expect them to. So I would keep that in mind. I would honestly put in little step down jumps like these. Now what I mean is, it's eliminating this variance for the jump by having blocks like these, because if you look at my little red dot that I've enabled in the editor with the show clicks button, you can see I've clicked way earlier and held until I've landed, which means I've jumped straight away. Which means, if I use these stars again just to show, that any input from like here to here is always going to be confined to that one spot where you jump immediately. And that's good to make nice, consistent jumps. Say if you want to jump a big distance or have a dependable timing, you want to have a consistent jump like this where you know every player is going to jump in the same way, or most players with a brain are going to jump in the same way. It's mainly important for very difficult levels like demon levels, not so important for 3-star levels, but I think it's something that you should still take into consideration when building a level, to be honest. So let's just keep building for now. Just see how this sinks. We're going to put a little platform right here. Not really pushing the player too much to make a move, but we're going to land over here. Nice big platform with lots of space. Just in case you hit the orb too early, too late, as I was saying. Mixing up these structures with some floating ones and some big structures, big wide structures that go down in a pillar, because that's kind of what Rob likes to do sometimes. I'm going to put a pad here so this jump is always the same going off it. I'm going to put a stop pause. Excuse this interface, it is awful. Everyone has to get used to this really weird stop pause interface. It was so much better before. But anyway, I'm going to cut a little bit of this gameplay section out just because making gameplay is so subjective. I have less to say on the matter than I do for something like decoration. That's more my passion here. That's more what I'm going for with the RobTop style, you know? I don't know if I can build gameplay like RobTop, but I can probably decorate like him using the new 2.2 features. So we're just going to put a little platform here for now and just start working on the previous section decoratively, because we have a very bland opening section that's not entirely structured. We're going to work on that now. Also adding a little bit of extra structuring on the ceiling in the same way that RobTop would, so we can like really establish the vibes here. This is a nice little section I've done. Cool. So I'm going to change this to a pillar because it only makes sense with the other structures I've placed. Okay, let's just add some more floating structures in the exact way that RobTop would, with some floating objects there, so that if I play and jump through, we're going to die no matter what. Just to make it nice and easily sight readable, you can tell exactly where you need to jump, etc. on the edges of blocks, because these big wide blocks, as I said, they can be pretty widely interpreted, and I think if you just put like spikes near to the edge, it gives you a little bit of a heads up of where you might be expected to jump rather than jumping straight away. Maybe a new player would hit this orb and land on this block and think, oh, I gotta jump again, but no, because you're gonna land on the side of this block. So maybe that's a good structure, actually. I'm gonna keep that there. Now with our ground visualized right here, this level's looking pretty ugly at the moment because we have this pale white outline against this yellow line. So we're gonna do what we said initially. We're gonna set our object line to that color channel number 2, which is yellow, the same as the line right here. And I'm gonna place some ground spikes on the bottom of the screen just to tie it up a little bit more. We have the black ground and then these black ground spikes. We're actually going to put glow behind these that uses the light background in their detail color. Now this is something Rob likes to do because he likes to point out the dangers in his levels. If you look at a RobTop level, you can always tell exactly what to do and what not to do. Now albeit there will be a few fakes here and there in his levels, but you can tell because there will always be multiple orbs. He's not really that kind of devious person, you know what I mean? He's always got like some sort of signal for his fakes that are upcoming in the level. What I can picture Rob doing is selecting all of these objects on the bottom, all of these ground spikes, and just setting them to that same color of yellow. Now, I probably wouldn't do this a lot, but it's just a good way to bring in that line to the level and just make it feel a little bit nicer, and it makes the glow fit in a lot more too. I think it just looks better, to be honest. It makes the level look more full. Now, we're playing through, we have our structures in. What's next? The design and making it feel a bit more lively, so colors, etc. We planned this out earlier. We're going to use those brick objects that we put in. So let me just go ahead and select that, put it on 1 and 2 the same way that we planned it, and just fill in a bunch of these blocks using this pattern. Now, it does look a bit flat. Like this is a lot of the same color over and over again. So I'm going to show you a tactic to make it not the same color over and over again. I might just set it to a next free, which can be some kind of gray here. Just put it on the base and the detail. And if I just level that properly with the HSV slider, we can have like a dimmed version of the block that we're about to make, which is kind of cool because there are a bunch of black details on the bottom that haven't really made it into the design very much. But what we're going to do is set this up with a group to start off with, which is going to be group number 1. We can put a pulse trigger that is touch triggered. Now, what this means is that in this blue box, that the player touches, the trigger will activate. So if I just put something right here, as soon as we land on this line, we're going to activate this trigger for group number 1, which is going to light it up just to white as an example, just so you can see what's going on. We land, the block lights up. Nothing too crazy, right? We're going to select this pulse again, go main only, and make it go to red. Now what you'll see is that only the main detail here will pulse first. So that leaves the detail kind of hanging there. And it goes to red, just like we planned out. So if we copy again, click detail only, go color channel 2 with the lighter detail that we planned out, we can have this pulse that makes the block light up, and then we can just copy these 2 triggers and do the exact same thing. Just put it on the next block, and that can be for group number 2 instead of 1. Making sure that this brick that we've put in here is on the right group number. We can do some kind of little light up block here, but it's not the greatest. It's not the coolest. It's not really in style anymore. Let's just be honest. Rob's been doing this for a long time now. There are a bunch of 2.2 triggers that fit it much better, like an area tint. So if I go ahead and just place all of these bricks in with the same group, let's just say number 1, and I put this area tint on, which is going to make it main only, color channel 1, full tint on a block radius of around 5 blocks either side of the player. On the outside of the circle, the effect is going to be the least, so it's going to have the least tint. It might be like 20% of this overall tint, whereas the center is going to be full tint. So this is pretty cool. That's like around about the same radius as what's put in here, 5 blocks either side. We're going to target that on the player, put target group ID number 1. On the default setting, what this trigger will now do is light the blocks up red as we approach, which is really cool. We can copy this again, move it down, add it to the same group ID and everything. This is all going to be the same, but we're going to put secondary only, make it color channel 2, and maybe just decrease the length a little bit to 25 so the blocks light up first and then get to yellow as we stand on them, which could be pretty cool. We can just mess with these values a little bit and make it a little bit more dynamic, maybe like a 60-40. So it's like 2/3 of the radius can be the yellow. So they start to light up first. You might get a little bit messy with some of the grays in here. I feel like Rob picks his colors very carefully so that this doesn't happen. So maybe we can do something where the details light up a little bit earlier. That might be better. This actually looks a lot better. This is more in RobTop's lane, I think. So if we just fill in this section with all of these bricks, like we've just done, we're going to have a grand old time just automating our design process, not even having to put any more triggers after this point for our block design to light up. But I don't think RobTop would stop there, to be honest. I think he would add one more layer to the design that's going to be really simple without any effects or triggers or anything like that. Maybe I should have put another little floating object here. I'm just going to quickly do that. Just reusing some other blocks that I put into the level. Excuse me, 1 second. Cool, we have that set up. So what RobTop likes to do is he likes to go onto another layer here and put a thicker line on the tops of these objects like this. Now, white, very ugly, of course. But I'm going to show you how you can actually layer this wrong. If you see right now, if I put it on B1, for example, this line is underneath the yellow line, which doesn't look right. We don't want that in most cases. So what we're going to do is boost this to T2. I'm going to make it that same yellow. And in between, so what layer is this? T2 and 3. In between, I'm going to put some black glow, just like this, on a new color, which is just going to be straight up black. And it's going to go on T1, or T2 actually, underneath that layer 3 that the other one was on. So even if it's on 2, it's going to be bumped above, and you can see that there is now a little line that is sitting on top of these objects, just the same way that RobTop would do it, because he likes to add those little surfaces to the objects, just to make them pop out a little bit more. I feel like it makes the level look a bit more interesting. It's all about the personal preference, I think, but I think this looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same for most of the other objects in the level. Not these, probably, because that just looks really awkward. I don't like how that looks. It's not the real surface, because the spike is on the side. So same with this object. This has probably got to go. But overall, we're making pretty decent progress on this part. It still looks a little bit half-baked because of how much of the background is showing. We have no details, we have no color changes, but this still looks cool to me. I still really like it, so we can rock with this. Okay, now with our main color effects in place, what we're gonna have to do is start adding some decoration to the level. I'm gonna try out an arrow on that same gray as the blocks with the same group, just using the same area tint effect that we had going on for group number 1. The gray does not look good outside of that yellow outline, so maybe we can use the black that we used for this little glow here, just to see the difference. That doesn't look bad, that's a good candidate. Also, we could try using a new color channel that uses blending, which converts any brightness into opacity. So you can see that this is just 0 opacity right now. As we get closer to it, it's going to appear. So we have plenty of different options. I'm probably going to use the black arrows because they look a bit cooler, just to place some little emphasis on arrows, etc. RobTop himself does not like jump indicators. We've seen it. We've seen it in the comment sections. He is cracking down on them. But I think we can point to some orbs pretty nicely, just in case people don't know what an orb does. You want to click on that, right? That's a decent start for decoration. We can definitely go a little bit further with some chains on the tops of the objects, maybe using some pixel objects here. We can maybe find something like this that can have a black base and then maybe just a bright detail like the yellow to make it fit with the block. And we can also put that on the same group, see how it looks, just experiment with how this effect impacts the blocks. This looks good. We're going to use it just on the tops and bottoms of these objects. Simple as that. This is still not a lot of detail, but it's a good start. We should now probably focus on putting some little backdrops to the orbs. Now, these are the types of backdrops that I would be putting the 0 opacity, like fading in from Oblivion type blocks on. Let's just put this black blending thing on with group number 1. I'm scared that these are going to go the same color, but I think it's important to just test this real quick just to see how it works. That looks good. But maybe we should make another set of area tints at some point if we don't like how these colors are all coming together. I've decided that I don't really like the red detail on the arrows, and while the blocks turn red, I think I would rather the arrows turn yellow. So we can go ahead and select all of these arrows that we placed in the beginning. I think it'll also make a better combo with the red backdrop that the orbs have on them. We're going to give this group number 3 instead. And we're going to go to this area tint trigger and copy number 2 on this color channel for group number 3. So 3 is going to go yellow as we pass it. So these arrows look a bit better now. They make more sense. I kind of dig it. This is working well. Now, this is feeling a little bit static. There's not too many color changes that are synced to the song. There are no movements that are really building up the hype for this upcoming part, right? So I'm going to do something that Rob likes to do, which is just subtly move some of the objects. I'm going to pick anything that is just quite small, just like these little single block spikes, these arrows, give them group number 4, and then I'm going to place down an area move trigger. Now I have something to explain real quick. So when we set up the area tint, we are the ones that are lighting up the blocks. As we get there, based on our Y and our X, the blocks light up. So you can see right here, we are the ones that are making these go red and yellow. If we jump up, the effect is less. So you can tell it's on the Y. If I set this area move trigger up real quick with a decent radius, an easing that slows it at first, moves it quicker, and then slows it down towards its end of its movement, and I just put like a 2 block down movement on this, and I set it up with this setting here, the same way that we've got the area tint, we're going to be moving the object away. If I actually set it up correctly with the target and the player 1 in the center, we're moving the object away from us. And that's obviously not what we want to do here, because it's just going to mess up the gameplay. So now we're going to try it the other way around, where these blocks move into place by the time we get there, which is cool. But you can see they're kind of wobbly when I go up on the Y, because it's trying to adapt to my position. That's not what we want either. What we want is the nice smooth movement of the x-axis, but this one is moving it away from us, so this is the resultant. So as we get there, the blocks are going to move correctly into place, and this is pretty cool. I should probably set up that length to be a little bit longer so we have more time to react, and I can also bounce this, I think. The easing is pretty interesting. We can bounce these blocks into place, and that's going to build more hype than just a smooth movement, I think. So this is pretty cool. We can do the same thing if we go underneath the level real quick and just turn off that ground and copy the values of the ground spikes and just place down some regular objects with those same values just underneath anywhere that we've put these ground spikes. We can move these blocks up a little bit as we pass them, which is going to counteract the other movement that we have. So we have some movements going up, some movements going down. We're going to set these ground spikes to a specific group, which is probably going to end up being number 5, since that's my next free, which is nice because we have 4 and 5 for our area moves. Let's just make sure we don't select that object by mistake. Okay, number 5. What I will say is that we shouldn't move these objects too much because we have orbs quite close to them. So we're going to copy this area movement, and we're going to start off with a simple little move distance of like, not even a full block, like almost a block. And this can go a little bit less on the length, so it happens a bit quicker. Target group number 5, same thing where it only affects the X. So now we have these bouncing low ground spikes that are going to appear in front of our face. We should probably give them a different easing, such as a back out, which makes it move a little bit too far, and then back down into its place, which is pretty cool, because as we play, these ground spikes are basically going to show themselves appearing in the correct position. This looks nice. This feels much more dynamic than we had it before. I like that. And when I think which shader triggers would work best here, not sure about sepia. This just looks kind of strange. I honestly think black and white would go better. So this grayscale right here, I like this more. If I fade this on with like a 0.75, ease in out right before the drop here and kind of cut it when we hit the speed changer, I think this could go pretty hard. So if I just put like a 0.25 fade out with a bounce even just down to that 0 instead of being full. Let's just see how that looks here, just as a transition in. That's cool. I like that. So it kind of flashes on its way out, which is cool. I like that little bounce aspect to it. Then we should also set up some colors. So let's put down a little pulse trigger right on this yellow pad. I have the effect lines turned on so I can see exactly where I'm placing them. I personally don't use them because my eyes have gotten used to seeing where I've coordinated things, just being an effect creator and stuff. I'm going to put a short fade in time, longer fade out time. HSV on color ID 0 will just make it hue or saturate or go up or down in its brightness based on whatever color it is, which makes it really useful when you're putting multiple triggers, like a background trigger, a color trigger afterwards. So let's just increase the brightness and increase the saturation a little bit on this little pulse. We can do the same for color channel number 1 and number 2, and even number 3, so the bricks pulse a little bit there. I know RobTop would keep these in the same place, but sometimes, just to show you, I like to spice this up by kind of staggering them a little bit and creating more of like a ripple pulse. But I'm going to keep it the RobTop method just like this. Something else you might do is change the black little glow underneath to that yellow, or just copy color channel number 2, something like this that makes the lines pop out, and that hits especially when the blocks go down to black. I think he would maybe do that, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to delete that. I'm going to just try and make it as RobTop-y as possible. So I've added this pulse a couple of times. I'm sure you can see why I turn effect lines off when I usually build, because there are just so many triggers here that it's hard to see the actual level. But now we have some little pulses that just light up the blocks in different ways. It hits different when you've got that area tint on, of course. So there are a bunch of different layers to this building so far. I like the movements the most. That little grayscale trigger would match really well, actually, with a static camera, which is actually going to segue me pretty nicely into the camera control section of this video, where I'm going to place a static for group number 6 on an ease in out. 1 second, when we play here, you'll see that the camera's going to lock onto this little speed changer. It's not the greatest spot that I could have put this static camera, not going to lie. I should probably have put a different object, like a star maybe, behind it that's hidden right here, giving that group 6 instead of the speed changer, so that I can start moving this object a little bit to the right on an ease in out of its own, which is gonna just shift the camera over to the right like this. So as we're playing, there we go. It should also have a follow setting in the static camera. So now, if I playtest properly, it's not the smoothest thing of all time. If we change the move time on that star, we should have something a little bit nicer here. This works. Now, I think the star is like directly behind this object. I don't know. Yeah, it's here at this point, which is cool. So if I could just place an exit static camera like right around over here with a nice little 0.5, same thing that we just did. Exit. Not exit instant, exit static, there's a difference. Be careful with which one you do. That works, okay. And then we could just zoom out the camera a little bit and we have a cool little swing copter section. Awesome! That took like no time at all to create, which is really nice for me there. So, yeah, we just have a little static camera that just kind of brings us through the transition and then gives us a bunch of room for this swing copter. Very nice. Now I want to put a camera rotate trigger that's going to make it incline by 5 degrees of rotation on an ease in out, just on this pad here, which feels very lame on its own. Now what I could do is just place a zoom trigger of like a 1.2 on the exact same spot, but I feel like this just feels a lot more robotic. What I want to do is just move this a little bit to the left, like I did with the other movement for the static camera, just putting the time a lot longer, like a 1.2. The same zoom and everything, but it just feels like a multi-step process. It feels a lot smoother than just the simple boom bop. And right here, it's obviously going to be sideways. What I did is I'd moved the object before this static ever happened and then kind of created this multi-step camera process. We're just going to do the exact same thing kind of wrapping it around the outside with a 2-second move time back to 0 degrees for this rotation that ends as we get to this little swing copter portal. So you can see the levels kind of working nicely and smoothly with the camera here. We're going back to the regular degree, and you can't really tell that it goes back, which is good. I think camera controls should not always be in your face, and I think that's the way that RobTop does it, apart from transitions, which is why I have the drastic static camera right before the drop, so you can tell that it's serious business right before you go into the drop. I think that's cool. We've made that portal the focal point of the transition so that the next part becomes more sight readable because of it. Okay, now it's time to make the next section of gameplay, so I know what I'm going to be working with for the rest of this level. I'm not going to make it too long. I'm literally just going to make a swing copter section with big tunnels like this one that just let me sit and rest on these blocks just so I can get a little bit of a start on this section. Probably going to put big saw blades in this part like these ones right here, which is going to show the way. We're going to keep this nice and easy though, so we're going to make them nice and wide. We're going to kind of match them with saw blades that show you the direction that you're kind of expected to take through here, right? Now we have zoomed the camera out for this section, which makes this swing copter much larger than we really anticipated here. So let's just put an object just to show the ceiling. And yeah, if I just go ahead and check this portal, just to show you how it normally is, we're so much higher. We have 2 extra blocks of room to decorate with, which is interesting here. Probably going to keep this line on just so I can tell where my blocks are going to have to go. I'm just going to have to decorate 2 more above every time. Again, this is going to be a part of the video that is very subjective, so I'm not going to put too much time into talking about structuring and stuff. It just depends how you want the part to feel. I want this part to feel open, so I'm going to try not to use too many big structures and instead try and replace things with little spike blocks here and there, and the saw blades obviously as well. So we're just going to make this nice and simple, and I'll get back to you once we have structured this a little bit, and I'll explain it in a little bit more depth just so you can at least see what I've done. Okay, we have our structures set out. I'm going to remove this little ceiling piece, and we're going to select all the objects, make them that object line color number 2. Then I'm going to go into the animated object tab and just try and find an object that would fit with a saw blade that's kind of electric in some way. Maybe this one would work well as like an inside piece if I can get the colors right on it, and maybe speed it up so that it happens more often. So if I just put like a 1.5, something like this, we then have this little saucy object on top. I don't know why I said saucy. I think the colors are making me think of pizza. If I just put these on some of the objects and then match them up with electric objects in some way. I know that Dash used these objects in the same way. I can maybe get some kind of inspiration, but I think it would be good just to set out this little electric square at the top of the level with the corner pieces and everything in the right place, and just pasting the state, and then using this object overall just as a little template on 45-degree rotations, just shifting it into place like this, putting it on the layer below as well, just to make sure that the other objects are like on the right path, right? Then we could take these saw blades and just put them on the other end. Just trying to think of how this part could be built up. I'm going to copy paste a few more spikes just into a couple of extra different locations. This is literally because I'm thinking of decoration and I need objects to make it work. So here they are, I guess. Let's just extend this up a little bit, and we can add another set of bricks on a bottom layer that are kind of similar to these ones, but on the layer at the very bottom of the level. My idea here is that this is kind of like the RobTop creative section. For every level that he makes, he kind of has this gimmick set out, and obviously you never know what that's going to be, so I'm just going to call this part the part that you can't predict out of RobTop levels, and we're just going to go with this kind of brick crossed with electric structuring. So underneath these spikes, we're just going to have these big brick pillars, and we're going to just connect these to the ground and fill in the regular brick object. And these have the same group that are going to light up as we go past, which should be pretty interesting. Should make it pretty dynamic. It's just a cool little section to add a little bit of extra design, a little bit of a character trait to this level to make it feel a little bit more, like, just give it more personality overall. How did I still fail to layer these objects correctly? I swear I literally set out to do it and I never did. Okay, there we go. We're going to put the same ground spikes on the floor as well, but with a different group that's going to move it more, and that's going to set out the ceiling and the ground for the level. Now, the good thing about this section is that we're not going too close to the floor and the ceiling, so we can probably boost this like 2 times up instead of like the 8/10ths of a block that we were moving it before, which is pretty cool. We're going to have a different group for the ceiling because the bottom ones have to move up, the top ones have to move down. So this is cool. Let's just set out this section. Okay, now it's time to move these objects up into place. They're going to consume some of the blocks that are there, unfortunately, but I think that's quite funny. And they are going to be moving into that position, so you're still going to be able to see the objects as we get there. So we're just kind of like tightening the screen right now, and this object is getting completely buried, so I might as well just completely remove it. Let's set up our area move real quick let's just start with number 7, which is the bottom side, which needs to move up. I'm going to put that on a back out so it goes a little bit higher than it needs to before resting. It's going to be on the 100 length, and it's going to be on the x-axis, and it's going to stop as we get there. So as we play, you'll see on the bottom side, these blocks are just going to lift up, and you can see underneath them, which is kind of unfortunate. We need to definitely add another little object underneath just to remove that possibility of ever happening. This top side is group number 8, so let's go ahead and set up the area move for that one with just the opposite direction for group number 8. And when we play, you will see that the ceiling and the floor will come in together, except the camera's broken. Thank you, game, for the static camera amazingness. Make sure that your start pauses are very generous to camera triggers, guys, otherwise you will get thrown off like that. Because that's not how the ceiling actually looks in game. Let me show you that much. My goodness. Oh, can I not die? The designs aren't done, but this is how the part is looking at the moment. It plays well and it looks nice. We just have to fill in the rest of the blocks just to see that in totality. Once we've added all of the blocks inside, like I'm doing right now, I am going to be adding some little air decoration and then maybe adding a gradient in the back of the level. I'm not entirely sure. We shall see. I'm not sure if that would fit the RobTop 5, but I think this could do with a little bit of color density just to make the background feel a little bit more interesting, because when I was at the beginning of the level, I was very underwhelmed by how much open space there was in that bright colored background. To use a bright colored background, you need to be very bold that you've used the right amount of air decoration, because look at this thing, man. It is so open and it just looks under detailed. It looks unfinished, right? If I add a gradient at the back of the level, which I'm going to do right now, if I just put down this trigger, I wonder if it's really just as simple as placing a black base and then a black blending detail. It's not. Okay, interesting. So what we have to do is set up this gradient on those same colors and putting a vertex mode to it with some new groups that we haven't used yet. We can go from 9 to 12. In the Edit Special tab, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that is bottom left, bottom right, top left, top right. So let's just create a gradient real quick. Bottom left is going to be 9. Then we have to do bottom right, which is going to be number 10 here. Then we have to do top left, which is going to be number 11. And then we have to do top right, which is number 12. Now we have this big block, and it's a shame that we can't do black blending on this. It's quite sad. So we need to find our gradient object wherever I put it. It's right here. Good to know. Let's put this on the background color for the detail. So we're just going to add a new color channel, copy color, background real quick. There we go. So now we have this little gradient that's going to go behind the level. I mean, this is cool, but it's just going to stay there for the whole level. What we need to do is select all 4 of these points, give them a group number 13, and this can lock on the x-axis at the very beginning of the level. Actually, before the level even starts, I should say. We can just do it just like that. And as we go through, we have this background, which is very plain now. Don't like that at all. What we're going to want to do is select this gradient trigger, hit next free, give it group number 14 because it came up. We're going to turn down the opacity on group number 14. Just going to change the fade time down. We're going to go to like 20% opacity and then fade it back on for 14 up to full opacity again. And as you'll play, you'll see that this gradient disappears and lets the background through, which is actually going to flash, which is pretty cool. I like that. We're probably going to make it a bit quicker in its actions and maybe make the fade time a little bit longer and a bit less, because we don't want this gradient to be all the way fully opaque, right? We want it to just kind of make the bottom of the screen more dense. We can make the top half of it just red instead of being that copy color background, which makes it a lot brighter when it's on low opacity. So there's a lot of different ways we can approach things like this. I'm just going to make it low opacity from the very beginning of the level, like 2/3%, so you can see that it's light at the top and darker at the bottom. Maybe even moving these stars closer to the ground so that the actual density is placed more at the bottom of the screen like this. Just making sure that all of these stars are hidden in the level like this so you never see them. And then we have a bit more of like a bit of density on the bottom of the screen, which makes it darker. And this pulse turned out to actually suck. So I'm glad that we figured that out just by testing the opacity. You know, testing stuff like this is very important. You're going to want to just place a lot of different triggers, just see how it looks at different times. I really recommend just experimenting with the way that things look, because you can really do a lot with just some very short details that you might not have thought of previously. Like, for example, what I'm doing right now is doing a pulse to the full gradient as we go through this portal, and then maybe fading it back on as we go through this section to then fade it off towards the end. Just doing some different stuff, and then I'll tweak it based on what I see. So let's just save and play real quick. We have this gradient in the background, which is, it's broken at the start, but let's see. We have it, and then it just goes full opacity for this little pulse, and then it keeps going, and it just looks nice. Like, it's just a nice little breathing effect in the background that adds a lot of depth to the background. Let's make sure that these stars are placed far enough across to the other side. And what I noticed is that for our area move, we can probably go based on the Y position too. That's what's going to set our swing copter aside from the rest of the level. I definitely recommend making changes in the level that like differentiate your parts between one another. Okay, well that just broke it, so we're never doing that ever again. That was a terrible idea. It's a much more complicated fix that I'm not going to get into. Never mind. We can really easily just make background flashes here that are going to make this part stand out and just feel a bit more energetic. We can go to that full red here instead of just being that dark red. Okay, so we have these two pulses that are in sync with the drums here, and then all we should have to do is just select these and create a loop, and hopefully they don't go out of sync at all, but we can tweak it if so. Looks good to me. That's perfectly in sync in my eyes. We actually nailed it first try. Then we just need to think of details that we can add in between. We could do more arrows. We could do anything, really. We could even add more details towards the bottom of this section, like some little puddles or little streaks across the bottom. Something that fits in, though. You've got to remember, Rob adds a lot of his details for a reason, so you can't just really place details willy-nilly, unless you can, and huge if you can, because I think I just did. I'm just going to add a couple of extra details using the black blending method that we did earlier, and that group number 3 that we put on the area tint, along with some different types of decoration. I'm going to put more arrows, but a different style, just to switch it up a little bit. And I'm going to put these little arrows with this pulsing circle into the level a little bit, rotate them as we go along. Something else for a little bit of energy in this level would be block transitions on and off of the screen. I feel like that's a very important aspect that we haven't considered, that Rob actually uses a lot for his momentum going in and out of parts. So let's go ahead and add that straight into the level. We have these triggers at the very end of the trigger tab that control how the blocks move. So we're going to start off with just nothing, and then the blocks are going to move down until we hit this orb. And we're just going to test out different types of these block transitions just by syncing them to different sections of the level. So let's just go right over here. We can then put the opposite version, and then maybe after this section over, we can put this part. Now when we play, you'll notice that the screen puts the blocks onto the screen in a different way, which is actually really important when the camera zooms in and out. I feel like it's an underrated aspect of building that a lot of people just skip over. This feels a bit more lively now. It has the movements that we wanted. This is cool. I think you'll find that if you build a level, you will not have the same attention to detail that you had when you first started building. And that's something that you shouldn't be afraid of. But one thing I will say is, don't forget the integral bits of design that made the first parts good when you get to the stage of maybe fleshing out and trying different ideas towards the end, like the electric structures and stuff. I don't want to just throw my structures under the bus. I made them very simple just to maybe stand out against them. But, you know, in the beginning, we had this big structure pop out thing. We want to maintain what made our level good in the first place as we're going through. Are we done with this? I am not entirely sure. I think this looks pretty good as it is. It's not a bad RobTop styled level. It definitely is a little bit plain, but it's just a simple video. I don't want to do too much here. I'm just going to make a static camera for the very end of the level, which is going to be this star in the center of the screen, which is going to be group 17 hidden. There's going to be a static camera that takes a little while to get there, starting right here. It's going to be number 17, ease in out, 2-second move time. That's the right group. Yes, it is. Okay. I'm also going to grayscale this level just to end it off, just to send off the level on a nice little conclusive note here. And that is actually going to be it for this video, I do believe. I think we've done pretty well here. Just testing the static camera. It looks a lot better with that 1-second movement. We're then going to place a zoom that's going to go to 2.5 times in a much longer 4 or 5-second move time. I'm just going to test that with the start pause a little bit further back. I know I'm in the ship, but it's just easier to test with. Okay. Let's just make this a little bit longer. Finishing touches can really do a lot for the level, and I think for RobTop style levels, you really can't go wrong unless you just add stuff that makes the level completely unsight readable. But I think this is a solid result. I'm really grateful if you watched the whole thing. Do not worry if you didn't, because this is a very long video, and I'm sorry that I've waffled for so long. But I think I've done pretty well here. Like, this is a decently playable level. I think it's cool. Okay, this outro is very goofy, but yeah. We're just gonna pretend that that outro just did not happen. Thank you so much for watching this geometry waffle video. Check the links in the description, leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day.